Hey guys, and welcome. I'm Morgan Giss McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today author Connie Sirois, who is just launching her book, The Impact Directive. So Connie, thanks for joining us during your book launch week.
You're welcome. Glad to be here with you, Morgan, always.
Always. So this has been a really exciting journey for me to be on with you. I don't know if you remember this, but you were actually one of the first people to buy the revamped version of our book writing course. And that was just about 12 months ago. So we always talk to people about you can write your book in 6 months, you can publish it in 6 months. And you literally have done that almost to the day.
Yeah.
So that is pretty amazing.
It is. I didn't realize I was one of the first for the revamped class, the revamped course. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had just gone through and refreshed everything and then put it back out. And you were one of the first people to be like, yeah, I want in. So that's amazing.
Oh,
and yeah. And so it's a milestone for me too. So I'm
it's our anniversary.
It's our anniversary book.
Yeah.
And this has been a really special book for you to write because I think there's such a deep heart and message to the Impact Directive. So can you walk us through what is this book about and who did you write this book for?
The book is for people who really seek to change the way that they communicate with others. So maybe they identify that they come at things from a very self-centered or negative perspective, or maybe they just always feel a little agitated. Maybe they don't even see it in themselves, but they think people are always aggravating me. So just that person who's seeking to do things better. Sometimes even people that I've talked to, they're I thought I was doing it really well, but this has really given me some pointers and things that I can do better. So it was really for me, at all costs for me. And I realized that through the journey, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about the journey of the book, but it's a book about communication. It's a book about positively impacting people in every single moment. There's not a time where we're not communicating. So even if you're sitting in a room with people and you're being silent, that's communication. There's always communication happening. It's fairly overwhelming to think about, but there are a lot of things that we can do to really ensure that as much as we can, we are absolutely intending and then actually carrying through being super impactful on people in a positive way. And there's just such a need for it. There's so much negativity. There's so much out there where people are intentionally being negative. We see it a lot on social media, unfortunately. People make ugly comments to people they don't even know. So there's a lot of things to combat, but it starts with one person at a time. So that's kind of I guess it's really for anyone per se, because we all communicate, but mostly for people who just think, I would like to do things better. What am I doing that I could do better? And business, personal life, whatever it is, it's probably applicable.
Yeah. One of the things that has stayed with me since I first read your book, because I got to be one of your early readers, was about honoring the other person. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's really kind of a theme, a posture, an intention that I think you really call us and challenge us to is how can we show up and how can we honor the other person? What are some ways that you've seen that are ways that we unintentionally dishonor people? And how can we sort of flip that and say, okay, but now I want to show up in a different way and I want to intentionally sort of honor people when I'm in communication with them?
Yeah, I think that really struck home to me as I was writing the book. So the whole idea of impacting was there. And then as I started to flesh out all these ideas in my head, it really started to come down to, well, if we're going to do this, it's all about honoring. So you impact people positively when you honor them as another human being, right? When you just say this person is valuable because they are a person. And what can I do in this moment, no matter what's swirling around, to honor that person? It's very difficult because in many cases, people aren't honoring us, right? So there's a lot of dishonorable things that are being done to us. My challenge to people and to myself is to not dishonor back. And so in the book, it says, why would you want to do that to yourself? Why would you want to allow yourself to be negative and to say negative things, which impact you as much as anyone else, because someone else was negative to you. Why let that person do that to you? And so there's an internal component to the book too, right? We're honoring ourselves as much as we're honoring other people. And some of the ways we don't honor is, someone says something and we're in the, I'm in the middle of doing some things and someone asks a question and okay, just a minute. Like that tone that we use. Or, someone is talking to us and we're not listening. The looking down the phone while someone's talking is so dishonorable. I'm not in the moment with you if I'm paying attention to my phone. So that's a physical thing we do now because we always have our phones in our hand, right? We're like these little, a phone is like an appendage, I guess. So other things, just being ugly to people. I had a business person tell me one time someone had done something that he felt was kind of bullying in the business world, like kind of trying to push their way into business. And he said, well, when people bully, you bully back. And I thought, no, you don't. Like, that's not who we should be as people, whether it's in business or in our personal lives. So there's all kinds of ways that we dishonor. And some of it, we can dishonor people by just being silent. Something's happening in front of us and a person is really having a bad moment. And we just stand there and pretend to not see it happen and don't speak into that moment to try to make it better, then that's dishonorable too, because, you have an opportunity right there to speak into something and to potentially, maybe you won't see it right then, but to potentially change that moment for that person. So the gamut runs wide on the ways that we do it. Not emailing back when someone emails you, I don't know, we could list, there's a list, it runs long. And so there's all kinds of ways that we dishonor. The point is you have to feel it from your heart. So my real deep desire for the book is that it would move people to change their heart position. I didn't always have the heart position that I have. Not that I wasn't a good person, right? A lot of times, but I didn't always have the heart position. What I mean by that is the deep internal motivation to give people the benefit of the doubt, to acknowledge that other people have hard lives too, to say when someone's ugly to me, there's probably something that happened that made them be in a bad mood and it's not me, and to just give people that they didn't mean it, because that's in the book too, like just they didn't mean that, and just overlooking and not taking so many things personally that then make me want to retaliate or that make me want to dishonor because they deserve it, right? That whole idea of, well, they deserve it. That's a bad mojo right there, because it impacts you, like it impacts your brain, it impacts your subconscious, not just the other person.
And I know that you have really taken this to heart. Like this has, like you've experienced fundamental like life shifts, and we're going to talk about your writing journey as well, where you experience other sort of shifts. But for you personally, like once you adopted, you said like this heart position, this desire to honor other people, this impact directive, like what do you feel like has sort of changed in your life, in like your, lived experience of just daily communication, daily relationships?
Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that question.
Sorry, I didn't prep you with that question.
But this is really like simple, but I like myself better. Let's just go with that. And I think what I've noticed the most about myself is I don't think the thoughts I used to think. So not that everything always came flying out of my mouth, right? But my goodness. Couldn't these people just hurry up? I've got things to do. Like all of that internal negativity, that's communication too. And so the book talks about it says how to positively impact yourself and others. That's a huge part of the book, because I am just so much more overwhelmingly positive about situations. And that is a drastic shift. And the more I said, I'm going to do this. This is not just a little bit of a thing I want to do. This is the whole thing I want to do. That has been fairly profound for me. And so, yeah, it's not that it all happened within the year of writing the book. I think the book just kind of brought it all to a really, clear point where I could see all of these things in my life that had been moving me in that direction, but I had never really combined them all together. to see that they meant something in totality, not just, well, I'm a Christian and I should do these things, and I'm a communication expert and I should know these things, and I know all these things about psychology because I'm a communication expert, so I should do these things. Well, all those disparate things were great, but I wasn't really putting them all together and saying, yes, these things. And that's what the book did, right? It's not what the book started out to be, but that's what it did for me. It became this kind of culmination of all of these ideas. And not that I get it right all of the time. I think my family, if they're watching, will say, oh, she messes up. I do. Like we all do, right? So there's this stark admission that I need the book as much as everyone else, and I need to reread it as many times as everyone else does, because these are things that as humans we get wrong. Communication is not something you learn to do right and then do it right forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so dependent on what happened to you this morning, right? Or what life situations, are happening to you right now. And so I'm so in the middle of that right now, right? So it all depends on situations. It depends on what other people do, what other people have said to you. So it's not that you're going to get it right all of the time, but if you can just see small incremental shifts in how you think and feel, it will be so much easier for you to do positive communication with people, even when they're not being very positive at all. And I've seen that play out.
For sure. And I love that you, like, first, when you were first sort of answering the question, you sort of said, like, well, I'm thinking differently, even. Like, I'm not thinking as many negative thoughts, which means I'm not doing sort of the internal eye roll, or the I'm feeling rushed, or, even dropping the accidental, like, sarcastic, passive aggressive remark. And you also opened us up with the thought at the very beginning of, like, everything is communication, right? Like, we try not to get overwhelmed with that, but, like, from the moment that we wake up in the morning, like, the way that we get out of bed next to our spouse, the way that we greet our kids when they come into the kitchen, the way that, like, all those interactions, like, if all of them were a little bit better.
Oh my gosh.
If all of them came just a little bit more from a place of, like, honoring the other person, when you walk into your boss's office and you first sit down, like, all of those small micro interactions, like, they add up to fundamentally changing all of your relationships in your life, right? So it can have a pretty, like, massive magnitude of change in your life.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to put it. I mean, when you think about how change happens, right? Change either happens because something drastic happens to us and we have this moment of, no, I'm going to do things differently. Trauma, right? Traumatic events in our life can really shift us in just what seems like a 90-degree direction. But that's not most of the time, and that's not most people. And some people never experience that kind of traumatic change. Change happens incrementally. It's almost like you look back and go, wow. So for me, the book was a culmination. But when I look back, I see this starting when my mom passed away. That was 12 years ago. This is not a change that happened for me overnight. And I would never promise a person that I was working with, oh, you could do this. Like, like they say you can make habit changes in 21 days.
Yeah.
That's not what I would tell a person, because like you said, this involves everything, every thought, subconscious thoughts that we're not even aware of. That's part of our communication. When I'm talking to you right now, I have all of these subconscious things that are dictating how I'm doing this whole thing. That's part of communication. We have to learn to tap into, where do my perceptions come from? Why do I assume things about people? So it's big and it takes time, and we have to give ourselves grace, a lot of grace, that we're not going to do things right. But I love what you said. If you could just change like a smidgen, a little bitty bit of the 2,000 encounters you'll have today, you would end the day going, wow, that was a much better day than normal.
Yeah.
Right? I had a few things happen, but overwhelmingly, I feel like it was a much more in control day. So yeah, it's powerful. It's big as a topic, but it's so doable if you just take little pieces. The one little thing that bothers you the most about, maybe you get aggravated every time, like, somebody's late to work and you're like, this is going to ruin everybody's day because they showed up late. Maybe that's the one thing you notice always feeds your stress. Just work on that. Work on thinking differently about that. Work on, really considering why that person might be late, what they might need even if it's just that they need help because they don't manage their time well. That might not be their fault. Maybe they don't have any time management skills. Maybe they come from a family where time was not an issue and you just did things whenever. So just having that little bit of grace for people, but taking it in little bitty pieces, I think is probably less overwhelming than trying to just wholesale change your communication life.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that example that you used too about someone being late. Like, and if that triggers you, if usually that causes like a negative sort of knee-jerk reaction, and you can take some tools about learning to communicate well, to honor other people. Like you can change, yes, internally, like we've been talking about, not being as upset by someone else being late, but also in the way that you talk to them. Like that, when they walk in the room, what's that first communication that they see from you? Is it, oh, she's got arms crossed and she looks impatient, or is she sort of like leaning forward and like asking, like, is everything okay? Like, do you need help with something? Like those two reactions might cause very different like relationship outcomes. Yeah. And so like, this is important stuff.
Yeah. And one of the premises of the book is, and that comes from research, not just from me, is that you make change in the world by starting with you. You don't change, you can't hope to change anyone else in the world until you start to change things. So if I want to see, something happen in a person I work with, your example was great. If I want to see this person that I work with start to do things differently, I have to start to do things differently. And I've got to figure out what that is. And I've got to come at it from a positive perspective. I've got to think about the other person, not just what I want, but what is going on with the other person. And I have to communicate that in a way that shows compassion. It shows that I want to have a relationship with that person, whatever kind of relationship that is. It doesn't have to be an intimate relationship to have a relationship. And I have to really honor that person has needs and desires and wants too. And so that's a powerful way to change how you think about interactions. Someone just the other day said they had read part of the book, and they said they were like a pre-reader, and they said, I just realized I need to think less about myself.
Wow.
And they didn't really consider themselves a bad communicator. I wouldn't consider themselves a bad communicator. They're a really sweet person. But when they were reading the book, they were struck by how much they thought about themselves in situations. Yeah. And she said, I really need to start thinking about that. I really pay too much attention to what I want and not really what the other person wants. So I think there's little nuggets, depending on where you are. There's probably little nuggets that would be different for one person than they would be for the next person.
Yeah, totally. So if you guys are curious, if you want to think about ways that you could start to shift out of that negative knee-jerk reaction mode and into this positive, calling to honor other people, Connie's book is free right now. You can grab your free version of this book today, paperravenbooks.com/the Impact Directive. I've dropped the link in the description here so you can grab that, but go ahead and do it. Even if you're not gonna have time to read it till this weekend, just go ahead and get it today while it's free, so that you can have it loaded on your Kindle or your app or your computer for this weekend for a binge read. So grab that today. And I do want to, Connie, I want to talk a little bit about your writing journey, because you had this amazing sort of quasi-existential crisis that turned out for the best as you were writing your book. So can you tell us, what was the book you thought you were writing, and then what happened to change that trajectory?
Okay. So last year, before I bought the Ready to Write course, I was writing a business book. It had the foundational concepts that are found in the book that I have now, but they were very much from a business communication perspective only. And it was very technical, like, here are the methods, here's and these are not uncommon business communication methods that we teach, focus on the audience, have a conversational feel, be positive. They're not like rocket science in terms of business communication, but it was very technical. And I started to put those ideas together, and I was kind of floundering around, and I wasn't really on a schedule of writing. I was just kind of doing it whenever. And somewhere around probably March or so, I really felt God say, well, I want to be in your business. And when you're in business and you do enough business with business people, that's a scary proposition. And I was very hesitant, because I thought, well, I don't want to push anybody away. Like, I don't want to push away people who aren't Christian, right? And who are like, well, I don't want any of this Christian stuff. I don't want to push those people away because I know I can help them. Even if they, aren't Christian, it doesn't matter. You can still honor other people. And so I was kind of hesitant. And then I wasn't getting anywhere with the book. So I said, I need some structure, right? And to find some structure, I went back to, I had seen your stuff somewhere else before. I went back to it and I was like, well, this has good structure. I could use this as kind of like a guide, and I could, get at least some writing done. So I did that, and I started to write the book I thought I was going to write. And I started to go to the author groups that you have where we just kind of all get on the phone together and, bleeding hearts and all say what's happening. And as I began to write consistently and to do just brain dumping, right, like what you taught us to do, I started to write about things that really wouldn't have ended up in that book, right? So there were a lot of biblical things because I was very much entrenching myself in Bible study, something that I, had told myself for a long time I didn't have time to do. And so there was a lot of things happening in my life and I wasn't pulling them together. And so I start writing the book, and in probably May or so, I just became obedient and said, okay. And I just posted a post about this, but this is what I heard said to me. You need to let the Holy Spirit guide what you do with what you know. And that's like, it was profound. It was one of those moments like, did I really just hear that? Or who's that? Was that me talking? Who said that? And so really like you need to let the Holy Spirit guide what you do with what you know. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to really just write everything that I'm thinking about all of this stuff. So that's probably around May, I started doing that. And that's when I really feel like I really started writing the book, I guess. Like, that's what I would say. I was really actually trying to write a book, like not just putting a bunch of ideas down in Evernote, but I'm going to make this a book. And I followed the process. And when I finished that first process, I can't remember what you call it, whatever, it's like the brain dump part, right? Where you go back and you look at what you wrote. I read what I wrote and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what this book is. Like, it had the core concepts in it, but it was not at all the same book. And I thought, okay, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is not what I thought. Like, this is a biblically based psychology something. I don't even know what that is. And so, I kept following the process. I was like, okay, so Morgan says next step is to do like an outline of, like, not even an outline, but like write out all your main points. So I did that. And then I started trying to do all the next steps. And I realized, wow, like, this is a book that I want people to read. So the first one was a book that I knew people needed, right? I worked enough in business communication to know people don't do it right. So here's a book, like, but this was a book I felt like people needed. And the reason I knew that immediately is because I needed it. Like, as I was reading what I wrote, I would cry at moments, like, and sometimes I would say, oh, like, I got a personal story that goes with that. But it took me a long time. Like, you read my developmental draft, and I so remember one of your big comments was, where are you? Like, where's your story? And I was still at that point. So that's like September. So May, June, July, like 5 months, I sent a draft like to you and said, what do you think? And so, but I wasn't in there yet. Like, I was so resistant to put my testimony in that book because it's hard to say, I used to be really crappy to people. Like, like, it's kind of what you're saying. Like, I used to be really crappy to people. So that was the next hurdle, I guess, that I had to get over. Like, here's a new book. This is really powerful. I really think people other than me, right, need to see it. Although I really feel like the whole writing of the book was kind of my transformation moment where God was really saying, here's your moment. Like, finish it. Finish what you started 12 years ago. This is your opportunity. So I really feel that strongly, that whole year was my opportunity to complete, right? We're never completely perfect, but to complete my transformation and to say, look, you've done it. 12 years in the making, you've made it. And so that was powerful. But putting myself and my story in, that's really when it became what I felt like was something that was created through me, right? And that sounds maybe a little strange. I don't know. Like, it was for me because it wasn't wholly by me. Mm-hmm. So I was very guided by the Holy Spirit, very guided by, this whole idea that you know a lot of things, but you have to figure out a way to pull them together so that other people can learn from them. That was really for me too. So sometimes I feel like I was writing the book for me all along. And then when you said put your story in, that's where really it became, okay, so now this has to become for other people. Like, you know your story. So as I'm reading, right, I'm thinking about all the things that I know, right, where this applies. But now how are you going to make other people see the same thing? And that's where it became, I think, for other people. So it was really transformational. I think I told you on maybe a live we did before, and I've said this to other people since, because you asked me a question and I really had not thought about it. And I really didn't know the Connie that was on the other side of the Impact Directive. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty profound, and I don't want to cry, but I didn't know her very well. Just really amazed by that person. Like, wow, like thank you. But what's so funny is it wasn't a different person. It's like the person I was always waiting to be. It's really cool. Like, it's not like I became a new person. It's just that I wasn't ever really truly being the person that I was created to be. And that's been I guess the most profound thing about the book changing, right? So you asked, like, how did the book change? Well, that first book, that never would have happened, ever. I would have written that book, I'd have published it. A few people would have bought it. I would have used it as a prop for training and speaking and things like this. And it would have just been what I had always been doing. It wouldn't really have changed anything in my life.
Wow. That's so powerful. And this is honestly like why people ask me, like, oh, should I write my own book? Should I have someone else like ghost write it for me? And I just always recommend, I'm like, if you feel that calling in your heart to write a book, just like open yourself up and like be in the process of the writing, because that's honestly where so much transformation happens. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, Connie.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay, I have kind of another question that we could take in some different directions, but I'm going to try to guide us a little bit. So it was very personal, right, in the writing, and then you had to bring the book into a team, right? So you did publish with Paper Raven, which we love being on this whole journey with you. So, but then, you're suddenly, it's like editors are in the manuscript and designers are in the cover design and people are making, suggestions on like emails and social media and launch plans. And suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I'm talking with 8 different people about this book. And then it launches. And then, you get all these downloads and all these reviews. And suddenly it becomes like, it's not just my book anymore. It's like all these other people are sort of experiencing it too. What has it been like to open up to that process?
I actually think the toughest part was the developmental editing part, which happened before, only because I came to the book as a writing teacher for 20 some odd years. So when I handed it off to my first editor, I wasn't really that like overly concerned because I knew what to expect, because that's what I did for people really for a long time. But I knew it was fairly clean, right? I knew that we had picked apart a lot and I didn't really get a lot back from them. I think the hardest thing for me was that first look, like turning it over to you and knowing it wasn't that great, but that I had to like get somebody to look at it. So when the team came on for me, and this wouldn't be the same for everyone, right? So depending on, where you are as a writer, when the team came on, it was kind of like, oh, okay. So now somebody else can catch the errors and somebody else can like make the suggestions. And the cover design little contest was a hoot. It was so much fun. A little overwhelming because I'm not good with many choices. So I had enlisted my family to help me like get rid of as many as possible. But it was fun. It was a fun process to see kind of the book come to life in someone else's mind. Like when they read the title and subtitle and description, what do they think up? That was really cool to kind of see. Really pleased with what the final designer ended up coming up with, something that wasn't a stock art image. That was something that I really felt captured the point. So the team behind the scenes is great. I've loved having people that I can ask questions to. I was just talking to someone by email the other day whose friend is like self-publishing and they're using a person, but she's not really doing everything. And I was saying like, you just cannot really understand how nice it is to not have to learn 15 processes to make this happen. So that was, I think, for me, an unexpected like bonus. Like I didn't realize how much I wouldn't have to worry about, and not that I'm not going to have to learn. So like once this is all over, like, I mean, I have to know how to go into all this Amazon stuff, but I know that I can always ask questions and, reach out and say, hey, what do I need to do with this? So that part was really great. I've really enjoyed having the team of people back there. It's been neat to see their excitement for things and just to get them to be a part, to have them being a part of the whole journey has been really cool. So I liked it. I mean, I thought it was a great way to self-publish, right? To have a ready-made team and not have to go out and stress out about, finding lots of people. That's been really cool for me.
Oh, awesome. We've definitely loved working on the book with you. So
yeah.
Works for both of us.
Yes.
Okay. And so now we're in launch week. Yes. And the book is out and it's getting reviews and it's hitting number ones in categories. And we're still pushing it, pushing it hard for the next few days. What has launch week been like for you?
Super exciting, very humbling. So like the number of comments and compliments and just like, friends and people that I know on social media. I'm not doing any paid advertisements on social media. So it's mostly people that I know, right, that are commenting on my stuff. But it's just been really humbling to see people respond to the book and especially the reviews. Like, I don't know, there are probably, 12 or so up already. And a few of those people I don't know personally. Like one person, I'm not even sure who it is. And then one person I found out who they were. So like, it helped me figure out who one of the people were, but I don't know them. Like they don't have any reason to look at my book and leave a review. So that's been really amazing to see their positive comments. And I don't know, before I got on the live with you, there were like 405 downloads. Like I was not expecting that. I don't know if that's typical or not typical. I have no way to know. It's my first book, but I was not expecting like that many people to look at whatever they saw, whether it was something from me or a share from a friend or something you posted or something, that went out in the netherworld, however people see this. I just wasn't expecting that many people to see that and say, oh, that sounds interesting and click on it. So that's been a real boost for me to know, okay, so there are people when they see just the title and the subtitle who are intrigued to know more about that, who really want to know what's so close to my heart, right? What I'm so passionate about. So it's been like a really great little spark of hope that I can continue, being a part of. I kind of call it a platform. This whole Impact Directive thing is not something that I plan to like drop after the first book. It's really close to my heart. I've done some sessions with 7th graders. I've done some sessions with teachers, a couple of times with business offices. And there's truly a point where I feel like I touch people's heart with it. And that just drives me. Like I want people to have that moment where they go, I want to do that differently. That could be different for me. Because I think that's how you ripple effect, right? That's how you change the world. I'm not, thinking I'm going to change it all myself, but it's how you contribute to change in the world is by just touching that one little person's life. The 7th graders were amazing because I'm scared to death of anybody under the age of 18, although I have children. To stand in front of a room of 7th graders was probably more threatening to me than being in an auditorium full of 3,000. I was like, oh my gosh, there are 40, however they are 13-year-olds sitting in front of me. I was so intimidated, but it was great because you could see the looks on their faces. Like a lot of the things that I was talking about, they had experienced it or they had done it or they knew someone who had it done to them or was doing it. And you could just see it resonated with them. And those little seeds, like the book says, those little seeds need to be nurtured. They need to find someone who's going to, show them how to put some really good fertile soil on top of that so that it can grow into something better. So that's been really cool. And that's really what I want to do. That my whole kind of goal, I guess, dream is that this will give me the opportunity to talk to more people, to share with more people. So launch week's been great. It was a much needed week. We won't go into details, but it's been a crazy personal week for me. Lots of things happening. So it was a much needed part of my week to have all of this, great, glowing, complimentary stuff happening, so that I could kind of forget about all that other stuff.
Yeah. Well, it has been amazing to really, like, this is the power of the book, is that yes, it gets the message out there, but it also allows you to become the person who embodies that message,
Yeah.
right? And I think that you are really stepping up in a huge way, like sharing it out with all of your family and friends, knowing that this book is not like your typical business book anymore. Like, this is a heartfelt, God-infused communication book. And like, you're putting it out there, you're handing it to people and saying like, I believe you should read this. And to be that kind of person is an amazing transformation for any of us to make. So different, like sitting at home, that's one transformation. Yeah. But watching you go through, this publishing process and launching this week, I just want to kind of reflect back to you. I've seen just an amazing transformation. So thank you for being bold and stepping up and sharing this important message with the world, Connie.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And I don't love lives, so.
I know, you're doing so good.
I do them all the time, and I'm like, okay, no.
So, guys, go get Connie's book right now. You can grab a copy free today, paperravenbooks.com/the Impact Directive. Get that book. If you know that a friend is struggling with, there's just a lot of negativity in their life and they want to be more positive, they don't know how to open themselves up to that kind of communication and really honoring themselves, honoring other people, just ping them, send them a message and say, hey, this book is free today. And it reminded me, I thought that you might like it. Check it out. And just, give, like, let's spread this positivity, right? Yeah. There's enough negativity in the world. Let's get some positive communication mojo going. But yes.
And I would just encourage anybody to reach out to me. I mean, if you don't want to get connected through whatever kind of means that I have on social media or email list, but you want to just drop me an email, I read all my emails. My email is freely available by going to my website. You can find me. I would just love to hear the stories. I think that there are people who will be personally touched by things in this book. I've heard from, some of my closer friends who've read it, that said, oh, wow, this really resonated with me. But, drop me a line. I'd love to hear your story.
That'd be amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, Connie. You guys grab Connie's book and we'll see you guys next time.